America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
To another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Tony Angelini, Senior Vice President of Operations and Advocacy for Job Creators Network.
Today, we're joined by Beth Dozier. Beth is the CEO and owner of Revel Communications, a company that creates and leads comprehensive PR efforts on behalf of Fortune 500 corporations, industry associations, law and lobbying firms, bipartisan and nonpartisan political causes, and more. She's also the spokesperson and helps lead an organization called keepusposted.org, which is a nonprofit advocacy group. And in just 2.5 years, Keep Us Posted has become an essential voice in the fight to protect the mail. With a multifaceted government and public affairs campaign, they elevate the value of mail on Capitol Hill, in the media, and to the public, bringing together the industry and consumers to advocate for mail reliability and affordability. Beth's here to talk about the postal stamp prices and what you can expect how you can expect the prices to continue to increase. Beth, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited.
I don't think this gets any more Main Street than the Postal Service, right? We just sort of take it for granted that it's always there. We represent small businesses at Job Creators Network, and shipping is obviously can be a big line item for some of our small business owners. So I was really interested when we saw this story in Fox Business about the Postal Service and the amount of increases in our postal costs, but also how they're able to just do that. Tell us a little bit about your organization, Keep Us Posted, and what you're doing.
Well, as you mentioned, Keep Us Posted is a nonprofit advocacy group. We represent consumers, nonprofits, news media organizations, greeting card publishers, direct marketing and advertising interests, as well as paper, forestry, and recycling industries, and small businesses, in addition to all of those interests as well. And together, we're all united in the belief that a reliable, affordable U.S. Postal Service is essential to all Americans and needs to be protected, especially now. And there are a lot of reasons behind that. You mentioned a few of them, just being that the Postal Service is really the backbone of the American economy in a lot of ways. Mail is still essential. Mail is often, the best way to reach and get the attention of consumers. And, from even a legal standpoint, when you act legally, say you serve a subpoena or something like that, often it's not even, classified as accepted until it's sent, and it's accepted via certified mail. So the mail is not something that American society can live without or wants to live without.
What was sort of the starting point 2.5 years ago? You're working with some folks who wanted to start this organization. But what was the precipice of it at the point in time where you said, this is it, we've got to do something?
Well, it was around 2020 to 2021 when I started working on this issue, having worked with some of the interests on, some different nonpartisan political campaigns in the past. And really, we were all just grappling with, and in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic, where demand for mail and appreciation for it was surging. And we realized that we needed to make sure the U.S. Postal Service continued delivering for all of us, especially as the then new Postmaster General Louis DeJoy took over the Postal Service and started implementing reforms, which quite frankly were not and are not prudent, for us as a country to be able to sustain our mail service and our postal network.
Speaking of reforms, in preparing for this, one of the things that I had come across was the Delivering for America platform that was implemented right around that same time frame. How do you see this? It's a 10-year plan that they put together here into the future. How do you see it at the end of the 10 years, if it is implemented? What will be sort of the pluses and the minuses of the plan?
Well, the plan is being implemented. That's part of the problem. The plan itself was hatched, around COVID. It was officially released, I believe, in 2021. There are many parts of the plan which simply are not prudent. It favors packages over traditional mail when economically traditional mail is actually, the biggest revenue generator and, the biggest volume representation for the U.S. Postal Service. It's not packages. And not to digress, but when you look at packages, yes, we need USPS to deliver those as well. But, you have UPS, you have Amazon with its own, package delivery services and couriers. You have FedEx, you have DHL. The package space is already a very crowded one, and the backbone of the USPS is the mail. However, the Delivering for America plan penalizes the mail, drives up costs for traditional mailers and the American public who want to give and receive mail. And, putting those resources behind packages simply has not come to any sort of economic fruition for Louis DeJoy. I would also add that, while the Delivering for America plan was, hatched and put out there and approved in 2021, Keep Us Posted was behind and fully supportive of the Postal Service Reform Act of 2022, which did a number of things. Chiefly, it was intended to financially stabilize the USPS. The spirit of the law was intended to prevent postage hikes. So, not to go step back a second, but a huge component of the Delivering for America plan was for the first time implementing twice annual postage hikes that are not limited by inflation rates, especially when you're looking at how, a stamp price as well as what, a certain industry has to pay to mail, a newspaper or, different missives that are part of what's called the market dominant mailing industry. So anyway, a big part of the Delivering for America plan was implementing these twice annual postage increases across the board, something that had never been done consistently every 6 months. So Congress, as Keep Us Posted, our first big priority was getting Congress to act and introduce and pass the Bipartisan Postal Service Reform Act. So, as I said, it was intended to financially stabilize the USPS and prevent postage hikes. And it did that by, implementing a number of really smart fiscal reforms, including eradicating the requirement for USPS to pre-fund retiree benefits. Previously, the USPS was putting forward money to pre-fund its own retiree health benefits.
All right. So following up, you mentioned something a few minutes ago that kind of piqued my interest. Obviously, this being Main Street Matters and our focus being on small businesses. Mailers have always been one of the sort of key components to local marketing, especially for truly mom and pop dry cleaners, pizzerias, you name it. The mailers I get in the mail sometimes are the things I pay the most attention to. And you mentioned that costs are increasing, in addition to the costs for just about everything that small business owners are doing, going up right now. What is the sort of the increase look like for bulk mailing? And in terms of continuing to increase with the postage prices, what is the sort of the projection into the future for both mass mailings and individual postage prices?
Well, as of it's a little bit difficult to quantify that because it does change from postage hike to postage hike. When we talk about, an individual stamp price, so in other words, what a consumer would pay, for each stamp, as part of the Delivering for America plan, once again, that price went up 5 cents on this past Sunday, July July the 14th, I believe. It went up from 68 cents to 73 cents each. And we can, I can send you some graphics to show with that to illustrate it. But not only is that happening, not only are consumers paying more, and consumers, they're getting pretty angry about it. They're hopping on board with Keep Us Posted. No one likes it, but the real impact here are the postage hikes, which are absorbed by the market dominant mailing industry, which includes, those mailers you mentioned, those, includes the marketers, includes, everyone that's part of Keep Us Posted. So from, nonprofits, which have to get out the mail and also rely on a lot of individual mailers and, to get the word out, as well as not cash, but mailed in checks to support thousands of national and community-based nonprofits who have news media. So newspapers face their own stamp hikes, their own mail rate hikes each time a new rate hike is adjudicated. And that includes, digital media corporations, which also have to engage in the mail, and magazines. Then you have greeting cards, which obviously those are more of a consumer product, but greeting card demand will go down and has gone down, even though Americans want to continue sending them. We all love getting them. We all love receiving them, but stamp prices are getting too darn high. And then, as you mentioned, it affects direct marketers and advertisers. So, Keep Us Posted has really represents over 1,000 advertisers who represent 20,000 brands. And as you said, a lot of times direct mail is the best way to get someone's attention, especially within a local market. Just think about, getting a mailer from a real estate agent in your neighborhood. That kind of makes you pay attention far and above the attention that you would pay, on an Instagram story of the realtor showing a house, in my opinion. And then we also represent forest and paper industries interests. So pulp, paper, envelope manufacturers, as well as individual forestry and foresters and recycling interests. And then on top of that, there are the small businesses not necessarily affiliated with any of those, buckets of industries involved, but just small business in general. We rely on the mail. We rely on the mail for marketing. We rely on the mail to, drive foot traffic to in-person stores and even, online merchants. So it is a critical service, I think, in particular for, small business owners like me and like others who are tuning in today.
Beth, I absolutely look at the shipping rates and understand that that's a big line item for small businesses, and it can be very costly depending what industry they're in. But I also have followed over the years, when the fiscal year ends for the government, federal government, and they issue their basically, I don't want to say profitability, but their losses. The post office tends to be sort of the leader in that area on the losses. I've seen numbers as high as $5 billion a year in losses. What are some of the strategies and alternate reforms that you'd like to see implemented that would help not only bring efficiencies, but also help financially shore it up? Because I think most people do agree with you that the we need to have the U.S. Postal Service. Now, maybe they don't need to do all the packages. Like you said, the free market has really taken over the packaging system, and done it well and done it efficiency. And there's competition there to keep those, the market forces to keep those costs in check. I think we're good with what you mentioned, Amazon and UPS and FedEx. I mean, they do a great job at keeping their costs in check there. But what can your organization, or what do you all want to see done to see more efficiencies and keep them basically in business, for lack of a better term?
Right. I mean, we want to avoid any sort of bailout at all costs, and we believe that that's not necessary nor prudent for the American public or the government. In terms of an actual plan for what we want to see happen, the not to get too in the weeds as well, but the Postal Regulatory Commission is the federal agency which regulates USPS. And the reality is that it has been one of the few government agencies not utilizing its power to interpret the law. So they just take a pretty hands-off approach. And this is the PRC, the Postal Regulatory Commission, oversees USPS just like, FDA oversees the food and drug industry, just like, FTC, just like, SEC, just, in their own, economic sectors, regulating private industry and protecting the public. But again, the PRC has not been, since 2006, utilizing its power to interpret the law. So that's why Louis DeJoy and the Delivering for America plan was allowed to continue to move forward despite the Postal Service Reform Act of 2022, and the fact that the spirit of that law was to put a stop to all of it and to fiscally stabilize the Postal Service. But in May, the PRC, so Louis DeJoy and USPS, they have to file a few months in advance before every, biannual, every 6 months stamp mailing rate hike. They have to file. It's really just a formality because it always gets accepted because, again, the Postal Regulatory Commission doesn't step in, despite the fact that thousands and thousands of Americans and industries are commenting against it. But anyway, in May, as it was reviewing the latest stamp hike, which just took effect this past week, it issued a statement noting the imprudence of Postmaster General Louis DeJoy's actions. Yet it stated that the PRC stated that it lacked the regulatory authority to actually counteract his decisions. So basically, the regulator came out and said, we don't agree with this. We don't agree with all of these mailing rate hikes specifically. We believe they are imprudent, but we don't believe we have the political authority to reverse it. So what that means, and not to get into some other things that have happened in government pretty recently with the Chevron.
My follow-up question is probably where you're going, and that's Chevron.
Yes.
The Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court overturned a landmark case, Chevron, that gave deference. The courts gave deference to the regulatory agencies to interpret the laws. But what we've seen over the years, and particularly under this administration, is a lot of government overreach by unelected bureaucrats. And so there's a school of thought there that, and a lot of support behind the Supreme Court overturning that and basically forcing Congress to be very specific in their laws. And if they're going to write them, they need to, be specific, do their job, really easy stuff like that.
Yes. I'd say that, and I agree with a lot of that with the Chevron precedent. However, I don't, I agree. I believe in the system of checks and balances and do not believe it should be up to the courts alone to interpret the law. It does, from a political standpoint, scare me a little bit because you have, documents such as, our Constitution, which, all men are created equal. If you take it by the letter of the law, women aren't included in that. So that thinking about that from that sort of 10,000 foot level, more esoteric standpoint is a scary thing to me. But however, bringing it back to the Postal Service, since the Postal Service has a regulator, which has not been active, has been arguably the least active federal agency tasked with oversight and interpretation of the law. Um, Keep Us Posted is calling on Congress, and our advocates are as well. It's time for Congress, like you said, to seize its mandate to regulate the USPS before it destroys itself and before it destroys the mail network that has literally moved America since 1775. What we need is a new, clear, completely clear, bipartisan law, to protect our postal network and the future of our nation. It's more important than ever that laws be as clear as possible, be as didactic as possible, and subject to as little interpretation as possible. I believe the spirit of the law and the letter of the law work hand in hand very well in this country, especially when we consider the documents drafted by our founding fathers, and you consider the spirit of the law and what went into it and what they thought at the time and what they envisioned for the country in the future. But the time is now to, for the spirit of the letter and the law to join forces and get to work on some laws that are clear and can be more clear for centuries to come and not subject to partisan interpretation.
In the absence of a new law, and keeping with the spirit of the existing Postal Service Reform Act, what would sort of the top three choices for you guys? What would Keep It Posted like to see, just to in order to at least start to adhere to the law that already exists?
Sure. So, and I can't, fully comment on the law as it's being drafted and, introduced in a bipartisan way, but to tick through the biggest plans and asks for this legislation is to mandate that the PRC, the USPS regulator, holds the USPS accountable for efficiency and limit these rate hikes to once per year, again, rather than twice per year. We want to establish an independent advocate for mail customers to ensure consistency and access, and to empower the Postal Regulatory Commission to be the true regulator of postal rates and service. So as background, the USPS, had a very active office at one point of a public representative, tasked with hearing and fielding, public comment, issues with the Postal Service, and doing something about it. And they don't truly have that anymore. And they may technically have an office of the public representative, but it's not very active. And, Keep Us Posted specifically, we've helped our advocates, our consumer advocates, source thousands of comments to the Postal Service, to the Postal Regulatory Commission. And I believe that they have been heard. I believe if you look back at what I mentioned in May, where the PRC came out and said, yeah, we do think this is imprudent, but oops, we don't have any power. I mean, they're getting that pressure. There's just no consumer advocate, which we need to really be that go-between to listen to the voices of the public and to raise those voices, to the regulator and to lawmakers. So I think those would be, the big three things: just holding USPS accountable to its regulator, limiting these rate increases to once a year, and reestablishing, a consumer advocate at the Postal Service and at the PRC, to protect and defend and elevate the voices of the American public, and in particular small businesses that depend on the Postal Service.
Tell our audience how they can find out more about Keep Us Posted and what they can do to help you advocate for all of these very worthy causes.
Absolutely. Thanks. First thing, go to keepusposted.org. Click right there on the red Take Action button. You can see it at the top right. You'll be taken to a campaign where you can easily contact your members of Congress just in a few clicks. You can write your own message. You can, do your thing. You can tweet at your members of Congress, and that'll reach both your House members and your senators. And follow us. Please follow us on social media. We're at Us Posted on Facebook, Twitter /X, and Instagram, and share content with your networks. Our website, keepusposted.org, is continually updated and maintained, so all that content is shareable as well. You can email it. You can, go directly within the page and share it with your social networks. And then finally, if you are a small business interested in getting involved in this fight, please consider joining us as a member company. We, got to be completely candid here. We're not talking about very deep-pocketed industries. Our industries are, fighting for their lives, right now, fighting on behalf of their members, fighting on behalf of the small businesses they represent. The news media is, struggles for revenue. Nonprofits obviously, struggle, especially in times like these, to get the economic support they need. So while Keep Us Posted represents a humongous slice of the American economic pie, we don't have deep pockets, and we do all this. We build and mobilize through Keep Us Posted in very targeted ways, because that's just the reality of small business in America. So if you are interested at all in becoming a member company, you can email hello@keepusposted.org, or I'm sure after we finish up here today, we can include some links for how you can help and potentially join us in the fight.
Well, Beth, thank you so much for joining us. And you're right. I don't think people understand and how important this issue is. And we don't want to wait till something really bad happens to the postal system for people to start caring. So it is an important fight. I know you said in the beginning of our conversation that there's a lot of fires going on in the world, and postal policy may not be at the top of everyone's list, but when you hear what's happening, it is an important issue, especially for American taxpayers and for the costs and our small businesses.
Right.
So that's keepusposted.org. Please, our audience, if you want to go there and get involved or join or support the organization or send a letter to your representatives, it's keepusposted.org. Beth, thank you so much for joining us here on Main Street Matters today. And thank you to our audience for taking the time to listen. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network, and we post new shows every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.